It's time to crunch some leaves. Hello everybody, it is Katie here, and it is officially crunchy leaf season. The most superior season. Aesthetics wise, vibes wise. Autumn is the best. There's squirrels everywhere, the leaves turn red, things look pretty, and life feels just a little bit less shit. So usually I would do a Halloween book rec video, but I have realised that I don't really read that much horror, so I tend to recommend the same few books year after year, and it is getting a little bit repetitive. So this autumn I thought I would just recommend some of my favourite autumnal reads. Books that give me that autumn vibe, even though quite a few of them are ones that I've recommended in Halloween videos. What can I say? I have my favourite comfort reads. I am going to start with one to read if you do want something with slight horror vibes, and that is Summer Suns. I have recommended this one in a Halloween video before. It's not horror, but it does have a horror vibe to it, if that makes sense. It's more dark academia in my opinion, because it does revolve around a college. It probably wouldn't be classed as dark academia because they don't really do much learning. But then again, you don't see much of the classes in any dark academia book. It's more about them, like, murdering someone. But this book contains some ghostly figures, some gory, gruesome, weird dream sequence type chapters. Genuinely, it's a very weird story, and I think it takes a specific type of mindset to get into it, but once you are in, it's one of the most amazing stories ever. If you are anything like me, you will probably have some sort of love-hate relationship with it at first, but persevere, because it is great and the characters are amazing once you really get to know them. If you want something a little bit nicer, then I would highly recommend Sorcery of Thorns. This is the perfect autumn read for me because it revolves around libraries and magic and books, and the setting is kind of like an alternative Victorian period. So yeah, it just screams this time of year. It is a fantasy book that revolves around books that have feelings, kind of, and it's set in a world where sorcery is still feared for the most part. So our librarian main character falls in with a sorcerer, and it takes them a while to really connect, but it's an adorable, evolving relationship, and it's just the perfect type of book to cozy up and read in front of the fire that you can't afford to put on because of this goddamn energy crisis. So next up we have a book that has very similar vibes to Sorcery of Thorns, and it's one I recommend every single year. It is Howl's Moving Castle. I can't think of a better book for autumn. It's just everything you need. To summarise this book, it's about a wizard called Howl and his moving castle. There you go, that's it, that's all you need. No, seriously, if you don't know anything about Howl's Moving Castle, then you've been living under a rock. So I don't really think you need me to summarise the plot. But if you've only seen the Ghibli film and not read the book, then the book has a very different second half to what the film does, so be prepared for that. But also, it's different in such a brilliant way. It's more Welsh. There's definitely parts of the story that I understand why they weren't in the film, because they wouldn't really belong, but I love them so much that I wish they were. Can you imagine a live action of Howl's Moving Castle? Can you imagine how amazing that would be? Like a mini-series, not the Ghibli style one, I mean of the book, so you could have typically Welsh Howl going to Wales to see his sister. I would love that so much. Someone needs to do that. Our next autumnal book is The Diviners. So this is the first book in a series, and it's set back in the 1920s, and it revolves around some individuals who have certain abilities, and it kind of follows them separately, and then their stories start to intermingle, and I always love stories like that anyway. What I love about this book is that the language is authentically 1920s. A lot of YA books that are set in a certain time period incorporate some of the language but don't follow it too closely, whereas in this you get the 1920s slang and saying and tone throughout the book. The characters are really fun, but the story overall has a real darkness to it. I think it's got one of the creepiest opening chapters that I've read in a YA book. It's very descriptive. I will say that it can be slow for the first half of the book, I would say, and it is a big book, so if you're somebody that likes more fast-paced stories, then this one probably isn't for you. But if you don't mind a bit of a slower build-up and a good old mystery, then this one's perfect. And we all love a mystery at this time of year, don't we? So yeah. Sticking with the fantasy / mystery theme, I have Cemetery Boys. This is a fantasy book that has a murder mystery in it. It's another one that revolves around spirits. It's a Mexican story that is set around the Day of the Dead. It has the perfect vibes for this time of year. It's got a cozy sort of spookiness to it, so it's not too dark, but there are still high stakes involved, and I just adore any story with a ghost love interest, so yeah, it's one of my faves. So next up, if you want something more intensely dark academia, then I have the queen of dark academia, and it is The Secret History. I have such a complicated relationship with this book because I still, to this day, don't know how I feel about it. There are some parts that I absolutely adore, and then there are some things about it that I hate. There were plenty of times in this book when I was reading and I was just thinking, why the hell am I still reading this book? But then you get to the next chapter and be like, oh, this is why. But regardless of my relationship with it, it is a perfect autumn book. Because of the location and that academic setting, it is set in a college. We follow the characters to classes and around campus. It's very autumnal. If you don't know anything about the plot of The Secret History, then it follows a group of students who are focused on learning about Greek philosophy, and they take it a bit too far and it all goes to shit, and that's the plot really, and it's stretched out over all these pages. It is one of those books that I think everyone should give it a try just to see how they feel about it though. I might reread it one day, I might not. But if I was going to reread it, it'd be this time of year. I think any dark academia book is perfect for this time of year actually. It's just the right season for it. But the reason I've gone with this one rather than If We Were Villains is because I have an even worse relationship with that one that I still need to make a whole video on once I've calmed down. Because it's been... how long has it been since I read it? It's been a long time since I picked up that book. Maybe a year. And I'm still pissed off. So yeah, if you're gonna read any dark academia, read this one instead. Carrying on with slight dark academia vibes, if you want a classic to read for the autumnal season, then I would highly recommend Morris. I've said time and time again that Morris is my favourite classic. Again, the location is perfect for cozy autumnal vibes. It's set in Cambridge. It's a very character-driven story about a young man trying to come to terms with his sexuality at a time when no one could be open about that sort of thing. Every time it gets this time of year, I want to reread Morris. But there's so many books that I want to reread at this time of year, so it's impossible to fit them all in. So yeah, for classic lovers, go with this one. So my final autumn recommendation is for people who want something more contemporary, and it is Fangirl by Rainbow Rowell. There's nothing specifically autumnal about this book, but I just feel like any story that starts with a girl's journey in college just fits for autumn. You know, at the start of the academic year, getting used to all of your classes and all of the new buildings you're in, things like that just always remind me of this time of year, so Fangirl's a perfect book. And let's face it, I've said Fangirl because usually in Halloween videos I always recommend Carry On, and I resisted this time. I resisted. Instead I'm recommending Fangirl, where you can still get a little bit of Simon and Bass. The urge to reread Carry On at this time of year is so strong. but I have a whole list of books I'm trying to get through. So they are my top picks for Crunchy Leaf season. Personally, I am hoping to reread both Summer Sons and Howl's Moving Castle. I might be tempted by a Dark Academia book as well, just because it feels right. Please do let me know all of the autumn books that you're planning on reading this season. Do you prefer books with cozy autumn vibes, or do you prefer horror books for spooky season? Let me know all of your thoughts down in the comments. I will see you next time. Bye! I have to clean all of that up now.